So I'd say when you're approaching other, approaching people who are coming into the Ron Paul door who may not be totally on message yet, or people on the right, or just with ordinary people, I wouldn't start with that approach first. But that doesn't mean that those aren't problems. It just means that wouldn't be my opening gambit as with Federal Reserve on the first dates.
Do we want everyone to comment on that one? Or? Yes, and yes, but it takes 15 minutes minimum to explain it, and you don't have 15 minutes. That's.
Well, a lot of times, like, you can't really comment either way. I mean, with certain people you can talk about that, maybe, but it really depends on who you're talking to. But a lot of times then maybe this conspiracy is happening, or maybe that one's happening, but the fact is the state is evil and wars happen because of states. And the problem is we need to get rid of this. So all this stuff could be going on, but you're going to get more people if you just point out that this is evil and it needs to go, and kind of like leave that on the speculation stuff kind of on the side. But like I said, it depends on who you talk to. Like some people, like I said, they have their different misconceptions of war. Some people think we're saving lives, even though we've killed more people than Saddam killed in his Kurdish genocide. I mean, depending on who you're talking to, there's different things they can approach it from. But overall, I think just pointing out that it's wrong is a better way than approaching it that.
I think too. The people have different theories. Most of them are frankly beyond me. And I include, there are theories on the left too, that you will have imperialism as soon as there's a certain amount of capital accumulated, it seeks outlets, and therefore there's war. Well, we've had empires long before we had, and wars long before we had capitalism. You can find problems with all these arguments. And frankly, I think that the simpler, the less controversial the reasons are, the better off you are. For example, and here I think the libertarians and the paleoconservatives have really a great argument. Look, we have a constitution. It's very important. The Constitution says that Congress declares war. We're in a war, and this is where Obama is really brazen in his defiant. Bush at least took the time to lie to us. Obama just did it. He says, screw it. We're the elite. We know what's good for you, and we're going to war. And if you don't think it's a war, well, we'll call it something else. and so that kind of argument that we have a constitution, the kind of argument that democracies and empires don't exist in the same body very well. Those are the horror of killing other people. These are the fact that we live in this wealthy, almost paradise of an island, which can pull itself apart from the conflicts of the rest of the world and become, like Jean Kirkpatrick said, a normal country in a normal time, now that the Cold War is over. And a normal country that's actually a very wealthy country, and we could have a tremendous prosperity. Well, those are all good arguments. And we don't have to, we don't have to go to, we don't even have to go to the military-industrial complex. And that, Walter Jones, who's very anti-war, from North Carolina, lives in a district where I think there are more military installations than anywhere else in the country. He's anti-war. So that doesn't necessarily constrain you either. There are openings here. So I agree. I think it has to be simple. It has to be something that's right in front of people, that you don't have to be a scholar about or delve deeply into different theories. No, it's right there before us, and so we should take advantage of that, I think.
Dr. Roort?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the panelists if they have any ideas of what a collaboration between all of us would look like.
Thank you, Dr. Roort, for opening up. I'm going to tell you a little bit. Actually, I'm going to get up because I do want to show this book for a second. I'm sure a mic because I'm not so much soft-spoken. This is a book, and it's probably my second favorite airplane read because I make it a point to read these sorts of things in public. The book I primarily do that with is Those Who Dare Say No to War, which is co-edited by Tom Woods and liberal professor Murray Polner. And that's a series collection of essays from all over, including people like Abraham Lincoln, who really wasn't very good on that war issue, all against various wars. Come of America is a transpartisan collaboration. And this is the result of a conference that happened in February of 2010. It was actually held the same weekend as CPAC, where, and Dr. Walsh, if you could talk a little bit about kind of maybe.
Well, there were 40 people who came together. George O'Neill, who's a paleoconservative and very much against the war, actually financed this conference. Came together people on the left and right. There were people, editor of the Nation was there, the editor of the American Conservative was there. There were writers from the Nation. There, Bill Kaufman, a conservative writer, some of you may know, was there. At the insistence of the right, actually, as opposed to the Democratic left, Ralph Nader was the keynote speaker. And the idea was to see what kind of cooperation, what kind of common ground we would have. And we had a lot of common ground. We spoke politely to one another. We agreed that we should try to do this. And out of that came this book of essays by the participants and a few others who couldn't make it, like Justin Raimondo. And we're following this up in various ways. We're trying to get some more publicity by sending a letter to Congress and the President signed by people on the right and the left, maybe a couple hundred, to say, look, we went into these wars. And we mention in that letter that the Libyan war is an impeachable offense. So we're not mincing our words. And we will follow that. Then, within half a year, another conference, a larger conference, hopefully of hundreds of people who want to build this movement. And you'll all hear about that. So I have a few copies of this. I have some more out in the car. If you want to pay me $6, you can. If you can't afford it, then you can have one free. So that's what we're trying to do. I think it has a lot of potential. And frankly, I really enjoy working with people who don't agree with me on everything. It's much more interesting, much more lively. And we don't have to be enemies just because we disagree.
Rich?
Something you mentioned earlier about the coalition building. We actually had some efforts back in, I want to say, it must have been 2004, 2005, very early in the Iraq conflict, of local peace vigils. It wasn't necessarily, they specifically made a peace movement, not necessarily an anti-war movement, and it was started by some local libertarians. One's actually an agorist anarchist, but it ended up, he started and said, hey, we're going to have a candlelight vigil. This was big several years ago, in downtown Nashua, the second biggest city in the state. He said, we're just going to do it. And it ended up more people from the left and the progressives came than libertarians. But they said, we're just going to do this. And they had conversations and they talked, and sort of people, they had this thing in common. And then they found out later that their politics were different. But because they had this thing in common, and they were just thinking, and they met week after week for years. And that actually ended up building a relationship where they ended up working together on other issues. But it was very local, very grassroots, and they started it in other cities. And it didn't, some of the conflict that was going on with these national, people pulling strings, didn't really affect this. So you said before, with the local Code Pink chapter backing up, and other things. So I think if it's like with most things, if it's a grassroots, it's just a purity. We want to do this, we all believe in this, and we can work together, and we've seen this a lot. Libertarians have a lot of experience as well. If you agree with us on this one issue, let's find out where else we have things in common, and can build these bigger coalitions that start reaching out, and you build that community that can work together. And I know for this one, they were having hundreds of people at a local rally, and it ended up, being in the news, which got more people involved and started to be more local activism. So it can definitely work as long as I think keeping it local for a lot of these things for the coalitions can help a lot.
That definitely works too, because even at the university, we form our coalitions basically we leave all the libertarian politics out of it, and we just focus on the war. But we've been able to actually form coalitions with community groups too. A huge group has been, there was this one, community partners, some people involved with that, but also the Quakers, a local Quaker church. They've come to our events, and when we advertise it, we are only talking about the war. We leave words like libertarian, liberty, things like that out of it, and it's just based on the war, and you get such a larger involvement when you do it that way too.
One thing I would definitely want to ask you guys before it's over, Dennis Kucinich and Ron Paul. I hear that all the time. If they just came together, we would, you know, the perfect whatever. And I'll have on my show a lot of progressives from all over the country, and they'll try to market me as a libertarian. You know, do you have contact with Ron? We need to get them together. We're going to, you know, and I try to explain to them what the problem is that there's so much of this other stuff that. What's your opinion? I mean, is there, because I know they're friends, they enjoy each other's company, but I mean, how do you guys look at that? Yeah, Will and John, I think you guys should respond.
Yeah. I mean, I broke into peace activism in 07 by volunteering for Dennis. And that was that was how the peace movement found me and how I got involved. And he's right here. Frankly, I would vote for Ron Paul without him if he could, and I intend to in the primaries. You know, and if they were together, I'm absolutely going to, you know, I will be at their service. You know, but there is a lot of difference. But I mean, again, for me, you know, the war and all that other stuff, like. You know, it's a much bigger issue because it ties to everything I care about.
I understand, but do you understand why that might not be able to happen?
Sure, and there are a lot of reasons, both, you know, their differences, and also that they're both not supported by the system. The media is not going to cover either one of them. You know, and that means that it's got to be entirely. It's up to us. It's up to people to inform without the help of the media, and that's problematic. But it's going to be tough. Whatever it is that we're going to do to fix our world, it's going to be tough, and I think that we need each other, and we're going to have to figure out how to cross that bridge.
Well, I guess I would say, you know, this is not all sweetness and light. In such a coalition, people have their differences, and I agree with the judge early on that people shouldn't hide their ultimate goals. They should say so. It's just that they should be willing to work for the next steps with people who don't share their ultimate goals. So I would say in such a coalition, you know, you have the general anti-war, anti-interventionist theme, and saving us a hell of a lot of money is not a bad way. I don't care whether you want to have lower taxes or more social programs. Settle that later. But I don't think people need to hide their views. I think they could converse with others and argue this back and forth. And so, on the other hand, there are people who will never be our friends. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and Dick Cheney are never going to be our friends. There is not that much sweetness and light in the world. They disagree with us. So you can have friendships, but there are enemies. There are people on the other side very clearly. I just like to make sure that we make one point, not for the whole world, but for New Hampshire. I think there's considerable potential to get people who are anti-war, but not Republicans, and not even Libertarians, to cross over in the New Hampshire primary and vote for Ron Paul.